The dying world held no mercy. Under its blood-red sky, two figures moved like ghosts across the wasteland. "Please, just one bite," she whispered to the empty air. The alien mother's voice cracked like old leather. Then her legs gave out and she fell to the burning ground. Her child still clutched tight in her trembling arms. The desert planet Veleron 3 had never been meant for living things. It was a garbage dump in space, a world the galaxy had used up and thrown away. Once, miners had dug deep for precious metals. Once the air had been breathable. But that was long ago. Now the mines were empty holes. The air burned your lungs. The last people who lived here had either run away or died trying. No cities remained. No colonies, no hope. Just endless heat, sharp rocks, and dust storms that could strip skin from bone. The wind here didn't whistle like wind should. It hit you like a fist, hot and dry, pushing tiny red particles into your eyes, your mouth, your lungs. No clouds ever formed in the orange sky. It's just waves of heat that made the ground shimmer like water. The land was broken and dead. Nothing. Green had grown here for years. Nara, 28 years old, took one painful step. Then another across the cracked salt flat. Each step was agony. Her knees wanted to buckle. Her legs shook with every movement. She held her arms wrapped tight around her daughter, trying to shield the small body from the worst of the killing wind. Zelva, only 5 years old, hadn't spoken in 2 days. She barely moved now. Her breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. Her eyes stayed half closed, unfocused. Like she was looking at something far away that only she could see. Nara's feet were bare and bloody. The sand had worn her skin raw. Her legs were covered in cuts, not from violence, but from crawling over sharp rocks and pieces of rusted metal that stuck up from the ground like broken teeth. Her clothes told the story of her fall from grace. She wore what had once been a fitted silver survival suit, the kind given to refugees on the transport ships. It had been designed to fit tight at the waist and flare at the hips, with special vents on the sides to let heat escape. But weeks of wear had torn it apart. The sand had eaten through the fabric. Weather had bleached the color away. She had ripped off half the sleeves to wrap around Zelva's tiny chest, trying to protect her from the sun. What remained of the suit now hung loose and useless around her thighs, flapping in the wind like a broken flag. 4 days ago, she had traded her boots to another refugee for a flask of drinking water. The water had run out yesterday. Now, her mouth felt like it was full of sand. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Every time she tried to whisper comfort to her child, her voice came out as a harsh rasp. But she kept whispering anyway. "Just a little more, baby." She had said those words maybe 30 times today, maybe more. She had lost count. Like she had lost everything else. Nara wasn't from this terrible world. She had been born on Hasari Prime, a busy planet where ships came and went like birds. She had worked in a shuttle hangar there, fixing small problems, earning small pay. She had been married to a mechanic named Javin, a good man with gentle wit, hands and a quick smile. They had been poor, yes, but they had been poor together. They had their daughter Zelva, and for a few precious years. If I had known what it meant to be happy. Then the war came like a storm. Governments fell, worlds burned, people ran. In the chaos, new laws were passed. The fertility programs, they called them, women were sorted, branded, assigned to breeding centers based on their genetics. Families were torn apart. Children were taken from parents who were deemed unfit. When Javin learned what was coming for his wife and daughter, he tried to save them. He got false papers from a black market dealer. He paid smugglers with money they didn't have. He made plans to run to the outer systems where the new laws couldn't reach, but the authorities caught him. They dragged him from their small apartment while Nara and Zelva hid in the closet. She heard the gunshot from 2 floors down. She never saw his body. Soldiers came for her next. They took her and Zelva to a processing center, a gray building, filled with crying women and frightened children. The center was overcrowded, too many people, not enough guards. When the security system failed during a power outage, Nara didn't hesitate. She grabbed her daughter and ran into the dark corridors, following other shadows toward a promised exit in the chaos outside. She found smugglers who promised refuge on distant worlds. She paid them everything she had, her wedding ring, her mother's jewelry, even the small credits Javan had hidden in their apartment walls. The smugglers smiled and took her money. They put her and Zelva on a ship with dozens of other desperate people. But smugglers lie. That's what they do. Instead of taking them to safety, the ship brought them here, to Veleron 3. The smugglers opened the cargo doors and pushed everyone out onto the burning sand. Good luck, they said, and flew away, leaving behind 50 refugees with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a few containers of water that wouldn't last a week. Nara had watched the other refugees scatter across the wasteland, each family choosing their own direction to die in. Some headed toward the mountains. Others walked toward what might have been ruins in the distance. A few just sat down where they were and waited for the end. Nara had chosen to walk toward the rising sun, carrying Zelva and whispering promises she couldn't keep. That was 5 days ago. She hadn't seen another person since. Ships in the sky, no lights in the darkness, no sign that anyone else was still alive on this dead world until now. A glint of light caught her eye near a rocky ridge ahead. At first she thought it was just the sun reflecting off a piece of metal, another trick of this cruel planet. But as she stared, squinting against the wind and dust, she realized it was too square, too solid to be just junk. Nara stopped walking and narrowed her eyes. There, sitting low against the horizon, was a shape that didn't belong. Angular white hull, solar panels partly extended like wings. A scout-class vessel, small but real, not military, civilian, probably unarmed. But it was a ship. She blinked, hard, trying to focus. Her legs gave out beneath her. Her knees hit the sharp rocks. Pain shot up her spine like lightning. But she held Zelva tighter and kept moving, crawling now across the burning ground. That ship meant air to breathe. It meant food. It meant water. Most importantly, it meant there was someone alive who might help them. The heat rising from the flat ground was like an oven now. Her skin felt like it was on fire. Her eyes streamed, but there were no tears left in her body. Behind her, Zelva gave a tiny whimper. Just a breath of sound, but it was enough to keep Nara moving forward. As she crawled closer, the ship became clearer. It was a single module, compact and clean, but covered with dust. She couldn't see any markings or flags on its hull. It's just a real ship, not something her dying mind had imagined. Nara managed to stand up, her legs shaking like branches in a storm. She held her child against her chest with both arms. Zelva's head didn't lift. Her body was wrapped in the thermal scraps Nara had torn from her own clothes. She staggered to the ship's hatch. Her right hand formed a weak fist. She knocked once, the sound barely louder than a whisper. Then again, a little harder. A long pause. Then a hiss of pressurized air. The hatch opened. Warm, clean light spilled out across the red dust like liquid gold. Nara blinked hard against the brightness and saw a man standing inside. He was backlit by the ship's interior lights, tall and solid, wearing a dusty gray jacket and rough work pants, boots, stubble across his jaw. His eyes were wide with surprise, his hands hanging at his sides like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Nara opened her cracked lips. Her voice came out broken and desperate. "Please," she whispered, "just one bite." Then her knees gave out completely. She collapsed onto the metal floor of the hatch, her arms still wrapped around her daughter. The world went dark. Adam, 33 years old, was not a hero. He wasn't a soldier or a rescuer. He was just a scientist, a biosystems researcher, working for a small planetary company that studied dead worlds. His job was to catalog microbes and test soil samples to see if anything useful could grow in the ruins of civilization. His ship was nothing special. Just a tour room orbital lander with basic equipment, a small kitchen, and enough medical supplies to treat minor injuries. He had been alone on Veleron 3 for 2 weeks now. The mission was simple: land, take samples, catalog what he found, and leave. He hadn't expected visitors when the proximity alarm started beeping. He thought it might be a bird or one of the small sand cats that sometimes wandered near the ship. When the alarm kept going, he checked the hatch camera. All he saw was static and heat waves. So he opened the door to look outside. Now he stood frozen in the doorway, staring down at 2 bodies collapsed in the dirt just outside his ship, a woman and a child. Aliens. The woman's skin was pale blue, burned and cracked by the sun. Her bright red hair hung in dirty tangles around her shoulders. Her arms were wrapped so tightly around the smaller body that Adam couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He dropped to one knee beside them, touched the woman's neck, feeling for a pulse. Faint, but there. Her skin was dangerously cold despite the heat, a sign of severe dehydration and starvation. Her survival suit was barely holding together. On her hip, he could see dried blood and something worse. A fresh brand burned into her skin. Not just a wound, a mark. Someone had branded her like livestock. The child Zelva was even smaller than she had looked from a distance. Her clothes were filthy rags. Her hair was silvery white, unusual for her species. Her skin had a bluish-green tint that was cooler than her mother's, but she was breathing. She stared blankly past him with wide, dark eyes, her mouth slightly open, but she made no sound. "Hey," Adam said softly, his voice gentle. "You're okay now. I've got you." He carefully scooped the child up and carried her inside. She felt his light. As a bird, fragile, like something that might break if he held her too tight. She didn't struggle or cry. She just kept her wide, dark eyes fixed on her mother's body, still lying motionless at the door. Adam grabbed a survival blanket from the equipment bench and wrapped it around the child. Then he went back for the mother. "Okay." She weighed almost nothing, skin and bones held together by will and desperation. Kay carried her inside and laid her flat on the ship's heating pad, wrapping her in thermal blankets and connecting a hydration patch to her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered behind closed lids but didn't open. Zelva watched from her corner, silent as a ghost. Adam knelt in front of her again. "Are you thirsty?" he asked gently. She blinked once, the first response he'd gotten. From her he brought a cup of warm diluted broth and held it to her lips. She took a tiny sip, coughed, then tried again. This time she swallowed. One breath, then another dot. Adam nodded encouragingly. "Good girl." Zelva closed her eyes and leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. Adam sat back and watched both of them, his mind racing. No panic, just cold calculation. They didn't belong here. They were clearly refugees. Maybe victims of trafficking. Maybe something worse. Someone had left them here to die. But who? And why? And more importantly, how was he going to hide them? He moved quickly to the ship's control panel. He turned off the ID beacon that announced his presence to any passing ships. He scrubbed the tracking logs that showed where he'd been. He switched the communications system to silent mode. If anyone came looking, they would find an empty ship with no record of passengers dot behind him. The woman stirred. Her eyes twitched under closed lids. Her breathing was still shallow, but steadier now. One arm moved slightly, fingers clutching. At the blanket dot, Adam stood up slowly. "Hey," he said quietly. "You're safe. You're on a ship. You passed out?" Her eyes opened halfway, unfocused and confused. Then suddenly she snapped alert, panic flooding her face. "Zelva." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "She's okay," Adam said quickly. "She's right here. She's warm and safe." Nara turned her. Hetton saw her daughter asleep on the bench, bundled in blankets, her small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The sight seemed to break something inside her. Her shoulders sagged as the fight went out of her body. Not relief, not yet, but something close to it. I didn't mean to be here, she whispered, her voice barely audible. We had nothing. They left us. I thought she was going to ... She stopped, unable to finish. Adam didn't push her for details. He had seen enough of the galaxy to know how these stories usually went. I'm Adam, he said simply. She hesitated. Then answered Nara. He nodded once. You're not going to die out there? Not today. She didn't thank him. She couldn't. Not yet. The words were too big, too heavy for her damaged throat. But she didn't look away from his face, and that was enough. The heating coils hummed quietly inside the small scout vessel. Soft light glowed from the ceiling panels, casting a warm glow across the metal walls that were dulled with the fine dust of Veleron 3. Adam moved carefully through the cramped cabin, checking gauges and monitors while keeping one eye on his unexpected passengers. Nara lay wrapped in thermal blankets on the narrow bench, her breathing finally steady and deep. The hydration patch on her shoulder was working slowly, replacing the fluids her body had lost during days in the desert. Zelva had curled up in the corner like a small animal trying to disappear into the fabric of her blanket. She still hadn't spoken since the broth. But she hadn't panicked either. That worried Adam more than screaming would have. He crouched beside the medical console and opened a diagnostics display. The readouts showed that both mother and child were slowly recovering. Nara's hydration levels were climbing. Zelva's blood sugar had risen out of the danger zone. That was progress. But their baseline readings were terrible, especially for a child. Weeks of starvation had left marks that would take months to heal if they were lucky. Adam leaned back in his chair, running a hand down his face. This wasn't part of the plan. His mission had been simple. Spend 3 weeks mapping fungal colonies along Veleron's surface and extract viable samples for food synthesis trials back on the core worlds. No passengers, no complications, no moral dilemmas. But Adam had spent enough years working in the outer systems to know how quickly people became complications. He had seen too many bodies dumped on airless moons. Too many cargo holds filled with refugees that smugglers never intended to feed. The galaxy was full of people that other people wanted to forget about. He looked at Nara again. The brand burned into her side was still raw, the edges red and angry. Someone had marked her recently, probably just before she was dumped here. It wasn't a species identifier or a tribal symbol. The pattern was too clean, too institutional. Deep, angular strokes designed to classify and catalog human property. Fertility caste marking, most likely. Which meant she had been processed and discarded by one of the breeding programs that had spread across the outer colonies like a disease. Adam checked his ship's communication logs. 10 minutes before Nara had appeared, his beacon had registered. A passive scan from somewhere in orbit. Standard patrol sweep, long-range surveillance drones, running ID checks, and heat signature analysis. Nothing had followed up on the scan, not yet. But something would, eventually. He stood and moved toward the galley module, keeping his movements slow and quiet. Every sound echoed in the small space, and he didn't want to wake the child. She needed rest more than anything else right now. But as he reached for the food synthesizer controls, Adam realized that rest might be the one thing he couldn't give them. Not here. Not for long. Someone was going to come looking for his ship eventually. And when they did, they would find 2 refugees who weren't supposed to exist. Being helped by a scientist who wasn't supposed to care. The question wasn't whether he would help them. The question was whether any of them would live long enough for it to matter. In the small space, he heated water, pulled ration paste, added a bit of thickener to make it easier to digest simple, non-reactive warm. Zella stirred. Adam turned the child, blinked up at him. Groggy, wary, she didn't speak. She looked past him toward the closed hatch, then back to Nara. Adam crouched. She's okay sleeping. Zella nodded, barely her fingers tightened on the blanket edge. Do you want more broth? She looked down, then up, then nodded again. He poured it carefully into a cup, no steam, not hot enough. Taburn held it out, waited. Zella reached for it. Her fingers were small, trembling slightly. She took a sip, then another. Her throat moved slowly. She swallowed. What's your name? Adam asked. She hesitated, then whispered Zelva. Hesmald faintly. That's a good name. She didn't respond. He sat back on his heels. Mine's Adam. A pause. Then softly, are you going to take her away? He blinked. What? She pointed. Barely toward Nara. Are you going to take Mama away? Adam stared at her, stunned by the question. The words were too calm, too quiet, not confusion, expectation. No. He said, I'm not taking anyone anywhere. You're safe. She held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded a single nod like she didn't believe him, but wanted to. Nah. Woke 2 hours later, not suddenly, not with a gasp or a jolt. She just opened her eyes. Anne blinked slowly. Her hands moved first, checking her sides. Her stomach, her clothes. Then she looked to the bench and saw her daughter Zella sat with her back toe. The wall sipping broth still. Bundled Nara sat up fast, pain shooting through her ribs. She winced and reached toward the child. Zella turned. Mama Nara. Pull at her close arms tight. Her fingers spelled against the back of Zella's scarf, clutching it like it might disappear. Adam stepped back, letting the moment pass without interruption. After a long pause, Nara looked at him. You didn't separate us. No, you. Gave her food. Yes, you didn't. Ask anything. Adam shook his head. You passed out my door. I'm not here to interrogate people. She nodded once. Her eyes were sharp, now still sunken. Still exhausted but alert. Watching, calculating. Where are we, Southridge? Zone Mid-Hemis Velarin 3, she exhaled. I didn't know where they dropped us. Smugglers. Nira looked down. No liars. She reached for the cup in Zelda's hands. Sippa was left her throat, worked painfully. Thank you, Adam. Crossed his arms. You need more tham broth. I got soft grain packs, nutrient salt tabs. She nodded. We'll take anything. Zolda looked between them. Is it magic food? Adam smiled. Just slightly, sort of fits. Science tastes like paper. The child wrinkled her nose. Nara's face cracked for a moment. Just a flicker, almost a smile, but it vanished. I don't know how long we were walking, she said, days. I lost count. I gave her most of the water. It wasn't enough. You did what you had to. She looked at him again, carefully, slowly. Are you here, Adam? Research? Soil fungi bioadaptation. There's a theory Velerons. Lower strata still support edible roots. I'm here to check. That's Eth shrugged. I don't work for a corporation. I just log data. No one cares where I go, as long as I report, shed, and look convinced. Adam leaned forward. You're not a problem for me, but if anyone else scans the ship and CC. Here Nara's entire body tensed. I'll erase the logs if they come close. If they come close, I'll shut down heat and go dark. We can stay hidden. Or I can prep for launch. And take you with me. That's your call. Zella looked up at her mother. Can we go? Not back somewhere new. Nara touched her daughter's cheek, then turned back to Adam. Her voice dropped low and firm. We won't go back ever. Then we plan, Adam said, and fast, if they come looking for you, I need to know who they are. Nara looked down. They're not people. They're systems. They don't wear faces. They wear badges. I'm from a place where widows are recycled, labeled bred again, or sent to facilities. If they catch us, she didn't finish. Adam didn't ask her to. He just said, you're not going back. For the first time since she stepped onto a ship, Nara didn't flinch. She nodded, not with fear, but with decision, and somewhere behind her ribs, beneath all the damage, something very old and very human stirred again. Choice. The scout vessel's interior remained quiet, lit in warm amber tones as the sun outside dipped low, casting deep shadows over the red dunes. Nara sat on the edge of the heating bench, her arms around Zelva, whose head rested against her shoulder. Her posture was straighter now. Breathing deeper. She had eaten a full ration and kept it down. The worst of the dehydration was over, but the fatigue hadn't lifted from her face. Adam sat across from them, crouched beside the system's console, keying through diagnostic scans. His ship's signature is now fully masked thermal dampeners. Running beacon, silent autolog scrubbed. It was a temporary fix if anyone returned to Velaron 3. Especially on official patrol, the ship would stand out no matter how well it was hidden. He broke the silence. Bill sweep again, maybe not today, but soon. Nara nodded, her eyes focused on nothing. That's how Thai operates, slow, steady, bisking the places. no one cares about. I can fly low to Thysothan cliffs. There's a basalt shelf deep enough to scramble. Signals we'd have cover what happens if they land, then we leave orbit and go dark. I have Vino fuel for 1 jump, maybe 2, but after that, it's guesswork. Zelda looked up. Is there food where we're going? Adam hesitated, then met her eyes their Wilb. Nara pulled her daughter closer, kissed the top of her head. If he says so, trust him. That moment, simple, unspoken, held more weight than anything so far. Adam felt it, not affection, not yet, but something closer to recognition that she was deciding bit by bit to believe him. And that scared her more than the storm outside. Zella soon drifted to sleep. Again curled on her mother's lap, Adam handed Nara a thermal wrap. She draped it over them, both smoothing the edges across her daughter's shoulders. I wasn't supposed to be a mother, Nara said. After a long pause, not officially. Adam stayed silent. They assigned me fertility bracket cast, genetic match. My husband was a shuttle mechanic. I met him by accident. He brebaited a sequencing clerk to cancel my placement, said. I had a respiratory gene fault. We married before the system could fix it, and they came after you, not right away, but he broke rules. And when they caught him, she stopped, the next words caught behind her teeth. Her throat moved once they left his body in front of our door to make a point. Adam didn't look away. You were marked. They branded me a deserter, unviable, too emotional. That's what they call women who don't comply. She touched her hip, not self-pitying, just tracing the memory. I fooled with Zelabot passage. Every coin we had, they promised to take us to Verons. Reach, instead they dump you. Hear her mouth tighten. They said it was standard. Refugee offloading, no complaints, no witnesses. Adam exhaled slow. His own voice had dropped without meaning to. Why didn't you call for help? Signal distress. Nara looked up, tired but clear-eyed, because distress calls go to corporate rescue ships and corporate. Rescue ships return property. He understood too well out. Here, law didn't mind protection. It meant ownership. Nara stood carefully, laying Zelv on the bench. She moved stiffly, one hand against the wall for balance, then crossed this small cabin to where Adam stood. He looked at her, expecting a request. Booch just stared at the view screen where the desert stretched endless and rust-red wind rolling in soft currents over the hills. You're not like the others, she said. I'm not sure what that means. They stare, they grab, they take even when they offer help. It's not without a price, Butu. Her voice faltered for a second. You didn't ask where I'm from or what I used to be. Adam answered simply, your hair thoughts enough. A long silence stretched between them. She didn't look away. She studied him, searching for something beneath its calm voice and quiet presence. Then, I haven't slept next to another person since he died. Adam didn't move. I don't mean, her voice broke. I'm not offering anything. I don't remember what it feels like to breathe in a room and not brace for someone's hand. He nodded. Slowly, you don't have to explain. You're safe here. That's all. She turned back towards Zelva and sat again, brushing hair from her daughter's face. She's too quiet sometimes, I think. She tries to disappear. She thinks if she's Mull, they won't notice her. She's young, she'll remember what warmth feels like. Nara looked over. Do you really believe that? Adam's answer was steady. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Outside, the wind picked up. A soft tremor passed through the hall. Adam adjusted the shielding narrow, reached down and wrapped Stelvit. Then something changed. A low beep echoed from the console. Adam moved fast. Scream lit ping surveillance drone. Sarobiddle. Nara's hands gripped the bench. They found us. No, but they're mapping heat signatures. If they get closer, then go. Adam paused. If I fly now, where Markador jump burns will show up, they'll trace the vector. Nara's voice was cold. Thon. Make it count. Adam stared at her, then nodded. Once he entered a flight path, disengaged stabilizers, and initiated the hover thrusters. The ship rumbled. Zella stirred, whimpering softly. Nara held her close. The vessel lifted, sand blasting away from the landing struts. Wind slammed the hull. Adam gripped the control yoke and set a course west. Low altitude shadowed route, hugging terrain. If he could make it to the basalt shelf, they'd vanish under the ridgeline. No signal, no heat plume, thing but dust and stone. He didn't know how long he could protect them, but for now, here, in this moment, he had Causen, and so had she. Together they moved into the red silence. the ship settled behind the basalt shelf just before nightfall. The descent had been tight meters from sheer rock, riding low on half-borne thrusters, but Adam managed it now. The vessel sat wedged in a natural overhang, shielded by layers of black, volcanic stone and the cold silence of Valoran's night. Inside, theolights dimmed automatically to night mode. A low blue glow filled the cabin. Adam adjusted the environmental controls, lowering heat signature output to near undetectable levels. Everything else, engines, scanners, auxiliary power, went dark. Except for life support, Nara sat on the floor, her back against the wall, knees drawn up. Zelva lay curled beneath a thermal blanket, a small bundle of pale limbs and silver hair, finally sleeping deeply. For the first time, the hum of the engines had been replaced by stillness. It was almost too quiet. Adam stood at the navigation panel, watching the orbital map. The last drone pass had veered north, no return signal, no atmospheric disturbance, but he knew better than to relax. Patrol routes looped. Sectors changed, they would come back. He looked over his shoulder. "You should sleep." To Nara didn't respond at first. Then she said, "I don't know how anymore." He walked over and sat a few feet from her, keeping the space respectful, close enough to talk for on, not to crowd. She kept her eyes on the far wall. "I used to lie awake, schmur, waiting for the locks to click, the sound of boots, someone with a file list or a needle. There's no privacy in the centers. They schedule your body like it's a machine, feed you protein paste, track ovulation. Then they lecture you about duty to the species." Adam's voice stayed low. "Is that where she was born?" "No," she said. "Zella was born outside Thesis, and she was a choice, the last one." "I was allowed?" He nodded slowly. "You were right to run." Nara turned her head. "Would you have helped me then, if you saw me standing outside?" "Those gates branded holding her would." "You have let me in." Adam didn't flinch. "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment, searching for something in his face. Doubt, hesitation. "IB. Guilt." She didn't find it. He spoke again. "You don't owe me anything. You didn't need to explain yourself." "I'm not keeping score." She nodded faintly. "That's the hardest part. Not owing. I'm not used to it." Adam did impress her. He reached to the side panel, pulled out a sealed pack, opened it, and handed her compressed meal bar. "Eat real food this time. We'll both think better." After she took a bit down, slowly chewing without looking at him. She didn't thank him note out loud, but the silence was no longer defensive, just cautious. Adam leaned back into the wall, staring at the ceiling, his muscles ached, not from exertion, from restraint. He hadn't slept either. His mind ran constant calculations. Fuel reserves, jump options, surveillance patterns, and yet a strange calm had crept into him since they arrived at the cliff. Purpose was anchoring him for the first time in years. He wasn't drifting Galen, he was choosing to care. A faint noise broke the stillness. Mama's zeal-stirred voice slurred. Nara moved immediately, kneeling beside her. "I'm here, baby." "Where are we?" "Someplace quiet." Zella blinked, then looked past her mother. At Adamas, the human, staying. Nara turned to him, then looked down at her. "Daughter, Yesha's staying." Zella let out a slow breath, eyes closing again. "Good." Adam exhaled through his nose, quiet, watching them. Nara laid down beside her daughter. She didn't sleep, but she rested. Her hand stayed on Zella's chest, feeling every breath. Adam stayed on the floor until the child's breathing deepened. Then he stood, careful not to make noise. "Que movetto." The rear module sat at the console and began logging an encrypted data block, not for his employer, K, but for himself. "Unlisted passenger. Encounter alien woman and child, branded survivals. Titus. Critical. Improving decision extraction. Priority human life over protocol." He saved it, deleted all previous logs, then he leaned back, turned it off the screen, and stared out the narrow window slit. Into the dead night. They were off-grid, now one signal trace away from being hunted, but the ship felt full, not crowded. Just alive, and for the first time in years, Adam didn't feel like a passenger in his own story. He felt responsible, not for the past, but for what came next. Mornings came without sunrise on Valoran. 3. Just a subtle shift in ambient light as the storm-thick sky softened to a dim gray inside. At the buried scout vessel, the air was dry, filtered, and faintly warm enough to serve Enough to stay hidden day 3 under the basalt shelf, began like Theoda's. No alarms, no pings, no sky traffic, still invisible, still safe Zelda. Stood barefoot near the water recycler, holding a cloth and cleaning her hands with focused care. Her arms were thin, but her fingers moved with more energy than before. Adam watched her from across the room, impressed by how quickly children adapt. How quickly they reclaim small rituals, washing, touching, watching Narasat by the power panel, legs crossed. Checking the battery regulator, she had insisted she wanted to understand how the ship worked, how they were surviving. She asked questions. Now clear Technolones, not as a guest, but as someone preparing to stay alive. Adam Answare Devarian calm direct. Without assuming he didn't guide her hands, he let her learn be, doing you work salvage. He asked Nar nodded dockside repair civilian hangars. Ick know backup systems better than primary ones. You've got good instincts. I had to, she said, standing up it. Was the only way I could work around men who didn't think. I belonged there. She moved stiffly still, but more confidently. She no longer flinched. When the air vent cycled, no longer froze. When a system beeped, her body had stopped bracing for the worst. Salah stepped toward them with a cloth, offering it to her mother. Your hands are dirty. Nara took it, crouched, and wiped her palms slowly. Thanks, sweetling. The girl smiled, a soft one, brief, then looked up at Adam. Do you have any paper? He blinked. Paper too? Draw. He opened a drawer, fished out an old nav chart notebook, handed it over with a half-dried marker. Zelda took it with both hands, like it was something sacred. She sat down cross-legged and started sketching a circle first, then stick shapes. Nara watched her for a while, then looked over at Adam. She's quiet now, but it's not her natural state. I figured she used to sing in the market. Wouldn't shut up, made up songs about sand getting in her boots. Adam smiled faintly. I'd pay to hear that. Nara turned toward the main bench. She sat again, this time slower. Her body moved differently now, less defensive, more deliberate. I thought once we landed here that I'd have to trade something, that survival would cost me something I didn't want to give. Again, you don't owe anything, she nodded. I know that now. She paused, then added, but it still feels strange being warm without being watched. Adam leaned back against the bulkhead. You being watched, just not the way you used to. She looked at him, serious. You don't want anything from May, want you to be safe, that's all. Nara lowered her gaze for a moment, then stood again, slower. This time not out of weakness, but purpose. She crossed the narrow room, stepped close to him. She was still barefoot, still in her patched tunic, but her eyes were calm. Focused, not seeking approval, just certainty. She stopped in front of him. I'm not offering you payment, she said. I know. Am offering you a choice, and I need to know if you want it. Adam didn't answer with words. He just stepped aside, gave her space, and waited. Nara stepped closer. Her hand reached for his not fast nachi. Okay, she placed it on her side, not where the tunic was torn, not where the scars were, but where her skin was. Whole, she held it there, no rush, no fear. This is mine. Now, she said, and I choose who I give it to. He nodded once, then I'm honored. She leaned in, not a kiss, just contact, a slow, quiet rest of her forehead against his chest, her breathings loud. Zelda, across the room, looked up briefly from her drawing. She didn't say a word. She just smiled to herself and went back to sketching a circle, this time with 3 figures. Inside, no alarms sounded that night. No scans, no threats, just the warmth of people who chose each other, not out of desperation, but trust. Stillness broke at 2:41 planetary time. A soft chime, low priority, barrel yachtable, but not a system fault, not a glitch. Adam was awake before the second beep. He slid out of his bunk without turning. On the light, crossed the console and tapped the screen. Atmospheric dishenty detected source. Active heat trail, high altitude descent vector. He exhaled through his nose. Jaw tight, not a drone, a vessel, small, fast, and controlled. Likely a patrol from across the cabin. Nara stirred. She sat up, blanket falling from her shoulders, eyes sharp. What is it, Adam? Didn't sugarcoat. We got a ship 3 clicks out. Descent arc puts them near the southern basin. Nara stood immediately. Do they see us? Not yet, but we're inside their scan radius. If they sweep this ridge. She was already at the power junction, pressing fingers to therm. Metal casing her body was steady, but her breath was quick. Can we move Tereski? We launch now, they'll get a heat signature. If we wait, we might get boxed and Zelda stirred under the thermal wrap. Mama Nara across the room, fast kneeling it's. Okay, love. Just stay quiet for now, the girl blinked, sensing the change in RG. Nah, turned back to Atom options. We cut power and go silent, or we run and draw them away. But if we run, we're burning our fuel window. I can't jump twice. If we go dark and we wait, they might miss us. They won't miss us. Neri said they never miss Adam, tapped the display ship was slowing. Now, no comes military pattern recon. Not recovery thatment. One thing they were scanning for illegal cargo. Refugees escaped Asset's people like. Nara, he moved to the hatch, unsealed the manual bay, and began assembling his old recon pod, a single seat. Eggs on shore, barely space-worthy. What are you doing? She asked. I'm going to draw them off. Her voice hardened. That's suicide. I don't have to trun them. Distract them. A quick launch, short burst, they follow. We moved. It's main ship while they're tracking a ghost. They'll shoot you down. They won't risk firing without ID. Not in this sector. Nur stepped forward. No, you're not going alone. You can't come. I'm no tasking. Her voice cut through the air like it belonged in a different life. She wasn't asking, she wasn't pleading, she was deciding. Adam paused. You have a daughter, she has me, because I didn't wait for someone else to act. I'm not stopping now. He didn't argue instead. He handed her the beacon scrubber, a small fist-sized box used to fake heat signatures. Do you know how this works? She nodded. We used to back on Hasari smugglers used. To plant them on delivery drones, he handed her the strap and started sealing the pod. I'll give you 2 minutes. If I don't trigger the signal, you launch the ship full burn. South Vector Nurse stepped in closer. Don't talk like you're not coming back. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked over at Zelva, now awake and silent, clutching the city of the bunk with wide eyes. Nara followed his gaze, then crouched beside her daughter. Listen to me, little one. If anything happens, you go with him. You'll trust him. He will keep you safe. Zelda's voice cracked. You're not leaving again. Nara swallowed hard. I'm not leaving. I'm buying us time. The girl grabbed her hand tight. Don't go where I can't follow. Nara leaned in, kissed her forehead. I will always come back. Zelda didn't let go. Adam stepped in. Hey, I need you to be brave right now. Can you doth it for your mom? Zelda didn't answer with words. She just nodded and released her grip. Minutes later, Adam was strapped. Nara sat beside him in the 2% sled, the beacon decoy pulsing under Herkney's trajectory locked. He said, once we fire, they'll see us, no going back. Nara looked out the viewport. The sky was a dull blue. Now patrol lights faintly visible, combing the horizon. She leaned back. Let them see us. He hit ignition. Thepkava launched like a bullet across the ridge, slicing through open air, panting a bright red signature in the dark. Alarms lit across the NAV console. Thep patrol ship changed course, locked on their following. Adam said, 10 seconds to beacon release. Nara triggered the scrubber. A second signal bloomed in Thayer, just below a rocky shelf. Stronger, hotter, false. Got them, he said. They're shifting, hooking low to intercept the ghost. Nara smiled. Told you they never miss. They launched the escape. Maneuvered, diving low, swinging wide past the cliffs. Adam triggered the auto return to dock. The patrol craft was still tracking the fake target. So far so good. By the Timithi returned to the main ship, Zelva was already seated in the co-pilot chair, small hands clutching the edge, ice fixed on the door when it opened, and Nara stepped inside. She launched in her mother's arms without a word. Adam watched the moment silently, then crossed to the console and cleared all loco telemetry. Gone. No trace. They bought time, not forever, but enough. Nares stood holding her daughter close. She looked at Adam, not smiling, not crying, just present steady. You don't have to protect us alone anymore, she said. He nodded. Good, Beckus. I wasn't planning to. They left Valoran 3 just before dawn. The launch was clean, no heat trail, no beacon burst. Adam timed it between orbital patrol sweeps, using what little fuel they had left to punch a straight, silent line in tow. The upper stratosphere, the ship groaned under pressure, but held. Nara sat in the co-pilot seat. Zella strapped beside her in a child's harness. Adam rigged from old mining gear and thermal waps. The girl clutched her drawing pad to her chest. It had only one picture inside, 3 small shapes drawn with careful, childlike lines. A woman, a man, Occult, all standing in a circle of stars below. Them Velaron 3 vanished into clouds of red dust and fractured stone. It had taken everything from them. And Javan, them nothing back except each other. They reached low orbit, silent and off-can from here. Adam had a single Shota hidden jump gate, nested in the asteroid ring near Arc Sector 12B. It was illegal, undocumented, but it still pulsed faintly with power smugglers used it once, now would be. Their exit Hekied's final jump code and leaned back 3 minutes to vector alignment, he said. Naru didn't answer. Her hand rested on Zella's shoulder, but her eyes were on him. Adam turned toward her. You okay? She studied him for a long moment, then stood. Slowly walked across the narrow space between them, stopped in front of him, her posture grounded. Her expression unreadable. I was waiting for the moment you'd change. He frowned. What do you mean when things got hard, when we ran out of options? If thought you'd start calling in debts. Start expecting something. He looked up at her. I didn't know you. Didn't she reach down and took his hand gently, not urgently. Her fingers were warm, steady. I've been living off fear for too long, she said, but not afraid of you. Rose slowly. Their bodies were close. Now the soft hum of the ship, the only sound. Nara tilted her head slightly, her eyes locking with his. No hesitation, no guilt, just decision when she kissed him. Wasn't shy, it wasn't desperate, it was quiet, confident, a woman reclaiming Zemithan. That had been taken from her too many times. The right to give freely's hands came to her waist. He didn't grip, didn't pull. He let her lead. When they parted, she stayed close, her head resting against his. Zella looked up from her seat, wide-eyed, and grinned faintly. You going to be my papa now? She asked, soft and curious. Adam blinked. Caught off guard, Nara laughed, once the first true laugh he'd ever heard from her, and turned toward her daughter. Only a few inches to Adam looked between them, then stepped back. Just enough to meet Nara's eyes. I want to, he said, both of you. All in. Nara exhaled, the tension in her chest breaking for the first time. In years her shoulders dropped, not from exhaustion, but from peace. A soft Chimacho jump alignment confirmed. The console read Adam. Turned, keyed the ignition, and locked their heading. The stars bent. The vessel slipped into hyperspace, the viewport filling with streetlight and motionless silence behind them. Nothing remained but dust and heat ahead of them, a new system. A quiet orbit, a place with no records, no brands, no patrols. A future. They didn't need a destination anymore. They had each other months later. The stars outside the viewport no longer looked cold. Adam stood on the small exterior deck of the orbital shelter, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in soil. The hydroponic trays were finally taking root, crisp leaf greens, mineral-rich stalks, and a few tubers. Nara had insisted on trying, claiming she once fixed a rusted hoverbike using nothing but potato sky nested and wiring. He looked over his shoulder inside. The small shelter unit light spilled from the warm interior. Clean lived in the bunk room had been expanded with salvage panels. A second sleep unit had been installed for Zelvond. The galley had real utensils now, not just ration forks. The girl herself, 6'No", sat at the table drawing again, new pens, new paper. Her had grown longer, teed back with a strip of Nara's old tunic. She scribbled something, looked up at the sound of footsteps, then jumped Upus. The door opened. Papa. Adam blinked. Not because he hadn't heard it before, but because it still hit him like a second heartbeat. Hey, Zelly, what are you working on? She held it up, a crude but bright drawing of a small home with stars above it and 4 figures. Now the fourth had no face, just a round belly and a soft outline. Is that? He trailed off. Zella nodded with pride. That's Mama, and the little one. Adam smiled, shook. He shed slowly and stepped further inside. Nero was sitting on the padded bench, one hand resting absently over her lower abdomen. She wore a soft fiber shirt, now gray with stitched seams, and her eyes tracked him even before he reached her. You told her already? He asked. Chef, it out before I did. Neri said she asked why I was throwing up in. The morning Adam knelt beside her and he checked twice. It's real. She placed his hand over her stomach. You did this, and I grinned. Well, I had helped. Zelda hopped onto the bench and leaned against Thembeth. Is it going to be a boy or a girl? Nara glanced at Adam. Will let universe surprise us. I hope it's a sister, Selva said, but I'll share my bed either way. Adam leaned forward, pressing his lips gently to Neri's. Her hand found the back of his neck, steady and sure, no tension, no walls, just the softness of people who had been broken and had built something better in the ruins when they pulled back. Nero whispered, "We're not running anymore." Adam nodded, "We're nothing either." Outside, the new garden lights flickered on. Inside, the sound of quiet laughter and breath filled the space. Zella pressed her hand over Nara's belly high. She whispered to the baby, "You're going to love it here." And for the first time since Valoran 3 Thieselins was full, the true end